Hello, welcome to my Christmas Day live stream. Thank you all for coming. Please let me know if the audio from my computer, from the YouTube video and my voice are all okay. Oh, sorry, for some reason I'm a little bit tongue-tied. I will be reading The Gift of the Margie story. We'll give it a moment while we wait for other people to come. Oh, holy night. It is a lovely Christmas carol, Oh Holy Night. So, anyway, while we're waiting, how has your Christmas been, Dr. Fowl? I had a decent, our British Christmas. Thank you. Yeah, we've all opened up our presents as a family together and had Christmas dinner cooked and watched the particular episode of Only Fools and Horses, which is one of the old British sitcoms. The episode had Del Boy and Rodney dressed as Batman and Robin. Good, got a cold, so not very festive. Oh no, that really sucks. So I hope you get better really soon. Okay, I think... Yep, BBC. Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, no, not BBC. It was on the UK Gold channel. You're welcome. Okay, I'll just now read Gift of the Margie. Okay. Oh, let me know if the audio from the music and my microphone are all okay before I proceed. What did I have for Christmas dinner? I had turkey, roast potatoes, mashed potatoes, broccoli, peas, sprouts, and it was covered in gravy. Hi Rabid Mouse, thank you for coming as well. All good. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, here we go. Oh, and how was your... hi Dinky Toy, thank you very much for coming as well. How have your Christmases been, Rabid Mouse and Dinky Toy? You can say, and I will respond back while I read this story called The Gift of the Margie by O. Henry. $1.87, that was all, and 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. I have a furry next semester. How am I supposed to act? Just act as normal. Act as normal. Yeah, they're still people. They just like to dress up in fursuits. It's just like cosplaying. Quite quiet just with my sons. That's great, Dinky. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing left to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. Hi, KDA. So Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home, a furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beg a description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for the mendicancy squad. How was your Christmas, by the way, KDA? In the vestibule below was a letterbox into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. Thank you very much. This PNG was made by Ichiro Zuri. He's a really good friend of mine. Been friends for years. He's actually from America. We both met on DeviantArt. That's how we ended up knowing each other. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, the letter of Dillingham looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with the powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a grey cat walking a grey fence in a grey backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87. $1? You don't use a plural when it's just one thing, you donkey. Anyway, tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honour of being owned by Jim. Yes, Dr. Fell. Yeah, let's just pretend that today's Christmas Eve. Okay, I'm really sorry, KDA. So sorry. Very, very cheeky, Dr. Fell. Okay. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honour of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its colour within 20 seconds. Rapidly she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now there were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the air shaft, Della would have let her hair hang out of the window some day to dry, just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor, with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed, just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. Hi Rashna, thank you for coming. That's no problem, Rashna. Just thought I'd send the link to you. But I completely understand. I hope you're having a really fantastic and lovely time with your family. Merry Christmas, Rashna. And Merry Christmas to all of you, by the way. On went her old brown jacket, on went her old brown hat, with a whirl of skirts and with the brilliant sparkles still in her eyes. She cluttered out of the door and down the stairs to the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Mademoiselle, Madame Sophronie. Hair goods of all kinds. 1 ate-up Della ran and collected herself, panting. Madame large, 2 white, chilly, hardly looked the Sophronie. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off and let's have a sight at the looks of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mass with a practised hand. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hashed metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stories, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by meretricious ornamentation, as all good things should do. It was even worthy of the watch. Hi Hinsdale, Merry Christmas. I hope you have had a lovely Christmas. It was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him. Quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 78 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends, a mammoth task. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh! What could I do with $1.87? Hi Hinsdale, I'm really glad to know that, and you're very welcome. Yeah, we all did, thank you. It was really lovely. It was fun as well. At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stairway down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit of saying little silent prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think that I am still pretty." The door opened and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22, and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat and he was without gloves. Jim stepped inside the door, as immovable as a setter at the scent of quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. Hi, Scambate Nonsense. We'll be listening while I drive into family's house and happy holidays and all. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you, and safe journey. Safe journey. Jim, darling, she cried, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you. You've cut off your hair? Asked Jim laboriously, as if he had not arrived at that patent fact yet, even after the hardest mental labour. Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me just as well, anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I? Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone? He said, with an air almost of idiocy. You needn't look for it, said Della. It's sold, I tell you, sold and gone too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered. She went on with a sudden serious sweetness. But nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim? Let's go to the little woman making up for being a dick. Oh, glad that you weren't sent to the kennel or doghouse. Sorry. Okay. Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He enfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Margie brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. Don't make any mistake, Dale, he said, about me. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first. Sonic say, Hinsdale's New Year's resolution is to stay out of the doghouse. Yes, you be a good Hinsdale. You be good for 2023. White fingers and nimble tore at the string and paper, and then an ecstatic scream of joy, and then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the lord of the flat. For there lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped for long in the Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jewelled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers, but the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone. Dog. Or at least dig a tunnel from the doghouse to the house. 2 weeks from today is going to be 12 years for us. Oh, that's really sweet. Oh, congratulations. But she hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leaped up like a little singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh!" Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it a dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. "Dell," said he, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep 'em a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs, and now suppose you put the chops on. The Margie, as you know, were wise men. wonderfully wise men who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest. Everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. The end. Very nice, Hinsdale. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's see. I'll see if there are any other good ones. Thank you. Glad you liked it. How about Bear Stays Up for Christmas? If I can read it, of course. Thank you. I appreciate that. The applause. Thank you. Thank you. I hope all of you have a better and wonderful new year. Thank you very much. I hope you do too. So, would you like me to read Bear Stays Up for Christmas? Let's just see. No, I can read this. Bear stays up for Christmas. So they stomp through the woods and they tromp down the track. They hoist up the tree onto Bear's big back. Coincidence a little, isn't it? He plods very slow as they trudge through the snow. But the bear stays up. Back at the cave, Gopher brews mint tea and Mole pops corn and string upon the tree. Oh. I'll have to read it somewhere else. Oh, stupid cookies. If I don't have any luck with getting the whole book of The Bear Stays Up for Christmas, I might have to read something else. Yeah, I think hopefully I might have luck. Okay, no problem, Hinsdale. Sonic, any dogs running around over there? No. but we have one that does yap quite a bit. That's a few doors down from us. It's like that the owners have no clue how to keep the dog quiet. Okay, I'll start again. Bear stays up for Christmas. Oh, limited preview. I'm so sorry, everyone. I have to read something else. Just trying to find a good one. Can anyone suggest to me what other Christmas stories I could read next? No problem, thank you, Dr. Fell. Hi, Pecan Head. Thank you for coming. How are you? I hope you had a lovely Christmas. So sorry for that yawn. That was... Oh, Discord. Okay, let me see. Okay then. Okay. There we go. Thank you for that, Dr. Fell. Okay. I shall read this then. Thank you very much, Dr. Fell. Barrington Bunny, an All Creatures Spiritual Archive story. From angelfire.com, extracted from Martin Bell's short story in his book The Way of the Wolf. Next morning, the field mice found their little boy asleep in the snow, warm and snug beneath the furry carcass of a dead bunny. Their relief and excitement was so great that they didn't even think to question where the bunny had come from. This is the story of Barrington Bunny, and a message to all at Christmas and Easter. Once upon a time in a large forest there lived a very furry bunny. He had one lop ear, a tiny black nose, and unusually shiny eyes. His name was Barrington. I love this picture. Bunnies are really adorable. Barrington was not really a very handsome bunny. He was brown and speckled, and his ears didn't stand upright. But he could hop, and he was, as I have said, very furry. In a way, winter is fun for bunnies. After all, it gives them an opportunity to hop in the snow and then turn around to see where they have hopped. So, in a way, winter was fun for Barrington. But in another way, winter made Barrington sad. For, you see, winter marked the time where all of the animal families got together in their cosy homes to celebrate Christmas. He could hop, and he was very furry, but as far as Barrington knew, he was the only bunny in the forest. When Christmas Eve finally came, Barrington did not feel like going home all by himself, so he decided he would hop for a while in the clearing at the centre of the forest. Hop, hop, hibbity hop, Barrington made tracks in the fresh snow. Hop, hop, hibbity hop. Then he cocked his head and looked back at the wonderful designs he had made. Bunnies, he thought to himself, can hop. And they are very warm too, because of how furry they are. But Barrington didn't really know whether or not this was true of all bunnies, since he had never met another bunny. When it got too dark to see the tracks he was making, Barrington made up his mind to go home. On his way, however, he passed a large oak tree. High in the branches there was a great deal of excited chattering going on. Barrington looked up. It was a squirrel family. What a marvellous time they seemed to be having. "Hello up there," called Barrington. "Hello down there," came the reply. "Having a Christmas party?" asked Barrington. "Oh yes," answered the squirrels. "It's Christmas Eve. Everybody is having a Christmas party." "May I come to your party?" said Barrington softly. "Are you a squirrel?" "No." "What are you then?" "A bunny." "A bunny?" "Yes." "Well, how can you come to the party if you're a bunny? Bunnies can't climb trees." "That's true," said Barrington thoughtfully. "But I can hop, and I'm very furry and warm." "We're sorry," called the squirrels. "We don't know anything about hopping and being furry, but we do know that in order to come to our house you have to be able to climb trees." "Oh well," said Barrington. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," chattered the squirrels. And the unfortunate bunny hopped off toward his tiny house. It was beginning to snow when Barrington reached the river. Near the riverbank was a wonderfully constructed house of sticks and mud. Inside there was singing. "It's the beavers," thought Barrington. "Maybe they will let me come to their party." And so he knocked on the door. "Who's out there?" called a voice. "Barrington Bunny," he replied. There was a long pause, and then a shiny beaver head broke the water. "Hello, Barrington," said a beaver. "May I come to your Christmas party?" asked Barrington. The beaver thought for a while, and then he said, "I suppose so. Do you know how to swim?" "No," said Barrington, "but I can hop, and I am very furry and warm." "Sorry," said the beaver, "I don't know anything about hopping and being furry, but I do know that in order to come to our house you have to be able to swim." "Oh well," Barrington muttered, his eyes filling with tears. "I suppose that's true. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," called the beaver, and he disappeared beneath the surface of the water. Even as furry as he was, Barrington was starting to get cold, and the snow was falling so hard that his tiny bunny eyes could scarcely see what was ahead of him. He was almost home, however, when he heard the excited squeaking of field mice beneath the ground. "It's a party," thought Barrington, and suddenly he blurted out through his tears, "Hello, field mice. This is Barrington Bunny. May I come to your party?" But the wind was howling so loudly that Barrington was sobbing so much that no one heard him. And when there was no response at all, Barrington just sat down in the snow and began to cry with all his might. "Bunnies," he thought, "aren't any good to anyone. What good is it to be furry and to be able to hop if you don't have any family on Christmas Eve?" Barrington cried and cried. When he stopped crying, he began to bite on his bunny's foot, but he did not move from where he was sitting in the snow. Suddenly Barrington was aware he was not alone. He looked up and strained his shiny eyes to see who was there. To his surprise, he saw a great silver wolf. The wolf was large and strong, and his eyes flashed fire. He was the most beautiful animal Barrington had ever seen. For a long time the silver wolf didn't say anything at all. He just stood there and looked at Barrington with those terrible eyes. Then slowly and deliberately the wolf spoke. "Barrington," he asked in a gentle voice, "why are you sitting in the snow?" "Because it's Christmas Eve," said Barrington, "and I don't have any family, and bunnies aren't any good to anyone." "Bunnies are too good," said the wolf. "Bunnies can hop, and they are very warm." "What good is that?" Barrington sniffed. "It is very good indeed," the wolf went on, "because it is a gift that bunnies are given, a free gift with no strings attached. And every gift that is given to anyone is given for a reason. Someday you will see why it is good to hop and to be warm and furry." "But it's Christmas," moaned Barrington, "and I'm alone. I don't have any family at all." "Of course you do," replied the great silver wolf. "All of the animals in the forest are your family." And then the wolf disappeared. He simply wasn't there. Barrington had only blinked his eyes, and when he looked, the wolf was gone. "All of the animals in the forest are my family," thought Barrington. "It's good to be a bunny. Bunnies can hop. That's a gift." And then he said it again. A gift. A free gift. On in the night, Barrington worked. First he found the best stick he could, and that was difficult because of the snow. Then hop, hop, hippity hop, to Beaver's house. He left the stick just outside the door with a note on it that read, "Here is a good stick for your house. It is a gift, a free gift, no strings attached, signed, a member of your family." "It is a good thing that I can hop," he thought, "because the snow is very deep." Then Barrington dug and dug. Soon he had gathered together enough dead leaves and grass to make the squirrel's nest warmer. Hop, hop, hippity hop. He laid the grass and leaves just under the large oak tree and attached this message: a gift, a free gift, from a member of your family. It was late when Barrington finally started home, and what made things worse was that he knew a blizzard was beginning. Hop, hop, hibbity hop. Soon poor Barrington was lost. The wind howled furiously, and it was very, very cold. It certainly is cold, he said out loud. It's a good thing I'm so furry, but if I don't find my way home pretty soon, I might freeze. Squeak, squeak. And then he saw it, a baby field mouse lost in the snow, and the little mouse was crying. Hello, little mouse, Barrington called. Don't cry, I'll be right there. Hibbity hop, and Barrington was beside the tiny mouse. I'm lost, sobbed the little fellow. I'll never find my way home, and I know I'm going to freeze. You won't freeze, said Barrington. I'm a bunny, and bunnies are very furry and warm. You stay right where you are, and I'll cover you up. Barrington lay on top of the little mouse and hugged him tight. The tiny fellow felt himself surrounded by warm fur. He cried for a while, but soon, snug and warm, he fell asleep. Hi, Aaron. Nice of you to drop by, thank you. Barrington had only two thoughts that long, cold night. First he thought, it's good to be a bunny. Bunnies are very furry and warm. And then, when he felt the heart of the tiny mouse beating regularly, he thought, all of the animals in the forest are my family. Next morning, the field mice found their little boy asleep in the snow, warm and snug beneath the furry carcass of a dead bunny. Their relief and excitement was so great that they didn't even think to question where the bunny had come from. And as for the beavers and the squirrels, they still wondered which member of their family left the little gift for them that Christmas Eve. After the field mice had left, Barrington's frozen body simply lay in the snow. There was no sound except that of the howling wind, and no one anywhere in the forest noticed the great silver wolf who came to stand beside that brown, lop-eared carcass. But the wolf did come, and he stood there, without moving or saying a word, all Christmas Day until it was night. And then he disappeared into the forest. The end. Oh, that's really sad at the ending. I see why in the beginning they were mentioning about the bunny being dead. But it was a good story anyway, but thank you, Dr. Fell. Okay, I'll see what else I can find. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Aaron. Merry Christmas. Hope you had a lovely Christmas. I'll find what else might be good. greatest gift. Oh dear, but we're celebrating it tomorrow, for our dad only got home this afternoon. Oh, okay. That's not a problem. Okay, I think I'll read this Christmas story. Oh dear, so sorry, Aaron. The greatest gift, Philip Van Doren Stern. Unable to find a publisher for the greatest gift, Philip Van Doren Stern, 1900 to 84, printed 200 copies of this story and used them as Christmas cards in 1943. From this humble beginning, a classic was born. Van Doren Stern's story came to the attention of film director Frank Capra, who said he had been looking for it all his life. Capra's adaptation, It's a Wonderful Life, starring James Stewart, was released in 1946, and while the film, which received Academy Award nominations for Best Picture, Best Actor and Best Director, didn't take home an Oscar, it has secured its as an American holiday tradition. That's good, Aaron. Describe George. What kind of man is he? Do you identify with him? Describe the stranger. Who is he? Why do you think he goes unnamed? When George tells the stranger that he wishes he had never been born, the stranger responds, "You've solved everything. Why does he consider George's wish a solution? In what ways is it one? How does George's experience demonstrate the ways that he's important to his friends and family? Does he need them too? What is the greatest gift? Why do you think this story is set during Christmas? How is it a Christmas story?" The little town straggling up the hill was bright with coloured Christmas lights. Hi, Dillhole. Thank you for coming. Merry Christmas. But George Pratt did not see them. He was leaning over the railing of the iron bridge, staring down moodily at the black water. The current eddied and swelled like liquid glass, and occasionally a bit of ice, detached from the shore, would go gliding downstream to be swallowed up in the shadows under the bridge. The water looked paralysingly cold. George wondered how long a man could stay alive in it. The glassy blackness had a strange, hypnotic effect on him. He leaned still farther over the railing. I wouldn't do that if I were you," a quiet voice beside him said. George turned resentfully to a little man he had never seen before. He was stout, well past middle age, and his round cheeks were pink in the winter air as though they had just been shaved. "Wouldn't do what?" George asked suddenly. "What were you thinking of doing? How do you know what I was thinking?" "Oh, we make it our business to know a lot of things," the stranger said easily. George wondered what the man's business was. He was a most unremarkable little person, the sort you would pass in the crowd and never notice. Unless you saw his bright blue eyes, that is. You couldn't forget them, for they were the kindest, sharpest eyes you ever saw. Nothing else about him was noteworthy. He wore a moth-eaten old fur cap and a shabby overcoat that was stretched tightly across his paunchy belly. He was carrying a small black satchel. It wasn't a doctor's bag. It was too large for that and not the right shape. It was a salesman's sample kit, George decided distastefully. The fellow was probably some sort of peddler, the kind who would go around poking his sharp little nose into other people's affairs. Looks like snow, doesn't it? The stranger said, glancing up appraisingly at the overcast sky. It'll be nice to have a white Christmas. They're getting scarce these days, but so are a lot of things. He turned to face George squarely. You all right now? Of course I'm all right. What made you think I wasn't? George fell silent before the stranger's quiet gaze. The little man shook his head. You know you shouldn't think of such things, and on Christmas Eve of all times. You've got to consider Mary and your mother too. George opened his mouth to ask how this stranger could know his wife's name, but the fellow anticipated him. Don't ask me how I know such things. It's my business to know 'em. That's why I came along this way tonight. Lucky I did too. He glanced down at the dark water and shuddered. Well, if you know so much about me, George said, give me just one good reason why I should be alive. The little man made a queer chuckling sound. Come, it can't be that bad. You've got your job at the bank, and Mary and the kids. You're healthy, young, and sick of everything, George cried. I'm stuck here in this mud hole for life, doing the same dull work day after day. Other men are leading exciting lives, but I'm just a small town bank clerk that even the army didn't want. I never did anything really useful or interesting, and it looks as if I never will. I might just as well be dead. I might better be dead. Sometimes I wish I were. In fact, I wish I'd never been born. The little man stood looking at him in the growing darkness. What was that you said? He asked softly. I said I wish I'd never been born, George repeated firmly, and I mean it too. The stranger's pink cheeks glowed with excitement. Why, that's wonderful. You've solved everything. I was afraid you were going to give me some trouble, but now you've got the solution yourself. You wish you'd never been born. All right, okay, you haven't. What do you mean? George growled. You haven't been born. Just that. You haven't been born. No one here knows you. You have no responsibilities. No job, no wife, no children. Why, you haven't even a mother. You can have, of course. All your troubles are over. Your wish, I am happy to say, has been granted officially. Nuts, George snorted and turned away. The stranger ran after him and caught him by the arm. You'd never take this with you, he said, holding out his satchel. It'll open a lot of doors that might otherwise be slammed in your face. What doors in whose face? George scoffed. I know everybody in this town, and besides, I like to see anybody slam a door in my face. Yes, I know, the little man said patiently, but take this anyway. It can't do any harm and it may help. He opened the satchel and displayed a number of brushes. You'd be surprised how useful these brushes can be as introduction, especially the free ones. These, I mean, he held out a plain little hairbrush. I'll show you how to use it. He thrust the satchel into George's reluctant hands and began. When the lady of the house comes to the door, you give her this and then talk fast. You say, Good evening, madam. I'm from the World Cleaning Company, and I want to present you with this handsome and useful brush absolutely free. No obligation to purchase anything at all. After that, of course, it's a cinch. Now you try it. He forced the brush into George's hand. George promptly dropped the brush into the satchel and fumbled with the catch, finally closing it with an angry snap. Here, he said, and then stopped abruptly, for there was no one in sight. The little stranger must have slipped away into the bushes growing along the riverbank, George thought. He certainly wasn't going to play hide and seek with him. It was nearly dark and getting colder every minute. He shivered and turned up his coat collar. The street lights had been turned on, and Christmas candles in the windows glowed softly. The little town looked remarkably cheerful. After all, the place you grew up in was the one spot on Earth where you could really feel at home. George felt a sudden burst of affection even for crotchety old Hank Biddle, whose house he was passing. He remembered the quarrel he had had when his car had scraped a piece of bark out of Hank's big maple tree. George looked up at the vast spread of leafless branches towering over him in the darkness. The tree must have been growing there since Indian times. He felt a sudden twinge of guilt for the damage he had done. He had never stopped to inspect the wound, for he was ordinarily afraid to have Hank catch him even looking at the tree. Now he stepped out boldly into the roadway to examine the huge trunk. Hank must have repaired the scar or painted it over, for there was no sign of it. George struck a match and bent down to look more closely. He straightened up with an odd sinking feeling in his stomach. There wasn't any scar. The bark was smooth and undamaged. He remembered what the little man at the bridge had said. It was all nonsense, of course, but the non-existent scar bothered him. When he reached the bank, he saw that something was wrong. The building was dark, and he knew he had turned the vault light on. He noticed too that someone had left the window shades up. He ran around to the front. There was a battered old sign fastened on the door. George could just make out the words, "For rent or sale, apply James Silver, real estate." Perhaps it was some boy's trick, he thought wildly. Then he saw a pile of ancient leaves and tattered newspapers in the bank's ordinarily immaculate doorway. And the windows looked as though they hadn't been washed in years. A light was still burning across the street in Jim Silver's office. George dashed over and tore the door open. Jim looked up from his ledger book in surprise. "What can I do for you, young man?" he said in the polite voice he reserved for potential customers. "The bank," George said breathlessly. "What's the matter with it?" "The old bank building?" Jim Silver turned around and looked out of the window. "Nothing that I can see. Wouldn't like to rent or buy it, would you?" "You mean it's out of business? For a good 10 years. Went bust. Stranger round these parts, ain't you?" George sagged against the wall. "I was here some time ago," he said weakly. "The bank was all right then. I even knew some of the people who worked there." "Didn't you know a fella named Marty Jenkins, did you?" "Marty Jenkins? Why George was about to say that Marty had never worked at the bank. Couldn't have, in fact, for when they had both left school, they had applied for a job there, and George had gotten it. But now, of course, things were different. He would have to be careful. "No, I didn't know him," he said slowly. "Not really, that is. I'd heard of him." "Then maybe you heard how he skipped out with $50,000. That's why the bank went broke. Pretty near ruined everybody around here." Silver was looking at him shocked. "Pardon me, I'm so sorry." Silver was looking at him sharply. "I was hoping for a minute maybe you'd know where he is. I lost plenty in that crash myself. We'd like to get our hands on Marty Jenkins." "Didn't he have a brother? Seems to me he had a brother named Arthur." "Art? Oh sure, but he's alright. He don't know where his brother went. It's had a terrible effect on him too. Took to drink, he did. It's too bad, and hard on his wife. He married a nice girl." George felt the sinking feeling in his stomach again. "Who did he marry?" he demanded hoarsely. Both he and Art had courted Mary. "Girl named Mary Thatcher," Silver said cheerfully. "She lives up on the hill, just this side of the church. Hey, where are you going?" But George had bolted out of the office. He ran past the empty bank building and turned up the hill. For a moment he thought of going straight to Mary. The house next to the church had been given them by her father as a wedding present. Naturally, Art Jenkins would have gotten it if he had married Mary. George wondered whether they had any children. Then he knew he couldn't face Mary. Not yet, anyway. he decided to visit his parents and find out more about her. There were candles burning in the windows of the little weather-beaten house on the side street, and a Christmas wreath was hanging on the glass panel of the front door. George raised the gate latch with a loud click. A dark shape on the porch jumped up and began to growl. Then it hurled itself down the steps, barking ferociously. "Brownie!" George shouted. "Brownie, you old fool, stop that! Don't you know me?" But the dog advanced menacingly and drove him back behind the gate. The porch light snapped on, and George's father stepped outside to call the dog off. The barking subsided to a low, angry growl. His father held the dog by the collar while George cautiously walked past. He could see that his father did not know him. "Is this the lady of the house in?" he asked. His father waved toward the door. "Go on in," he said cordially. "I'll chain this dog up. She can be mean with strangers." His mother, who was waiting in the hallway, obviously did not recognize him. George opened his sample kit and grabbed the first brush that came to hand. "Good evening, ma'am," he said politely. "I'm from the World Cleaning Company. We're giving out a free sample brush. I thought you might like to have one. No obligation at all." His voice faltered. His mother smiled at his awkwardness. "I suppose you'll want to sell me something. I'm not really sure I need any brushes." "No, I'm not selling anything," he assured her. "The regular salesman will be around in a few days. This is just a Christmas present from the company." "How nice," she said. "You people never gave away such good brushes before." "This is a special offer," he said. His father entered the hall and closed the door. "Won't you come in for a while and sit down?" his mother said. "You must be tired walking so much." "Thank you, ma'am. I don't mind if I do." He entered the little parlour and put his bag down on the floor. The room looked different somehow, although he could not figure out why. "I used to know this town pretty well," he said to make conversation. "Knew some of the townspeople. I remember a girl named Mary Thatcher. She married Art Jenkins, I heard. You must know them." "Of course," his mother said. "We know Mary well. Any children?" he asked casually. "Two, a boy and a girl." George sighed audibly. "My, you must be tired," his mother said. "Perhaps I can get you a cup of tea." "No, don't bother," he said. "I'll be having supper soon." He looked around the little parlour, trying to find out why it looked different. Over the mantelpiece hung a framed photograph which had been taken on his kid brother Harry's 16th birthday. He remembered how they had gone to Potter's studio to be photographed together. There was something queer about the picture. It showed only one figure, Harry's. "That your son?" he asked. His mother's face clouded. She nodded but said nothing. "I think I met him too," George said hesitantly. "His name's Harry, isn't it?" His mother turned away, making a strange choking noise in her throat. Her husband put his arm clumsily around her shoulder. His voice, which was always mild and gentle, suddenly became harsh. "You couldn't have met him," he said. "He's been dead a long while. He was drowned the day that picture was taken." George's mind flew back to the long-ago August afternoon when he and Harry had visited Potter's studio. On their way home, they had gone swimming. Harry had been seized with a cramp, he remembered. He had pulled him out of the water and had thought nothing of it. But suppose he hadn't been there? "I'm sorry," he said miserably. "I guess I'd better go. I hope you like that brush, and I wish you both a very Merry Christmas." There, he had put his foot in it again, wishing them a Merry Christmas when they were thinking about their dead son. Brownie tugged fiercely at her chain as George went down the porch steps and accompanied his departure with a hostile, rolling growl. He wanted desperately now to see Mary. He wasn't sure he could stand not being recognised by her, but he had to see her. The lights were on in the church, and the choir was making last-minute preparations for Christmas Vespers. The organ had been practising Holy Night evening after evening, until George had become thoroughly sick of it, but now the music almost tore his heart out. He stumbled blindly up the path to his own house. The lawn was untidy, and the flower bushes he had kept carefully trimmed were neglected and badly sprouted. Art Jenkins could hardly be expected to care for such things. When he knocked at the door, there was a long silence, followed by the shout of a child. Then Mary came to the door. At the sight of her, George's voice almost failed him. "Merry Christmas, ma'am," he managed to say at last. His hand shook as he tried to open the satchel. When George entered the living room, unhappy as he was, he could not help noticing with a secret grin that the two high-priced blue sofa they often had quarrelled over was there. Evidently, Mary had gone through the same thing with Art Jenkins and had won the argument with him too. George got his satchel open. One of the brushes had a bright blue handle and vari-coloured bristles. It was obviously a brush not intended to be given away, but George didn't care. He handed it to Mary. "This would be fine for your sofa," he said. "My, that's a pretty brush," she exclaimed. "You're giving it away for free?" He nodded solemnly. "Special introductory offer. It's one way for the company to keep excess profits down. Share them with its friends." She stroked the sofa gently with the brush, smoothing out the velvety nap. "It is a nice brush. Thank you. There was a sudden scream from the kitchen, and two small children rushed in. A little homely-faced girl flung herself into her mother's arms, sobbing loudly as a boy of 7 came running after her, snapping a toy pistol at her head. "Mummy, she won't die," he yelled. "I shot her 100 times, but she won't die." He looks just like Art Jenkins, George thought. Acts like him too. So the dog is sleeping in the doghouse under the dogwood tree on Dog Lane. Oh, for goodness sake. Oh dear. Okay. The boy suddenly turned his attention to him. "Who are you?" he demanded belligerently. He pointed his pistol at George and pulled the trigger. "You're dead," he cried. "You're dead. Why don't you fall down and die?" There was a heavy step on the porch. The boy looked frightened and backed away. George saw Mary glance apprehensively at the door. Art Jenkins came in. He stood for a moment in the doorway, clinging to the knob for support. His eyes were glazed, and his face was very red. "Who's this?" he demanded thickly. "He's a brush salesman," Mary tried to explain. "He gave me this brush." "Brush salesman?" Art sneered. "Well, tell him to get out of here. We don't want no brushes." Art hiccuped violently and lurched across the room to the sofa, where he sat down suddenly. "And we don't want no brush salesman either." Neither. "Hi, West Haven." "Alright, I'll say it one more time, Dr. Fell, for you. The dog is sleeping in the doghouse under the dogwood tree on Dog Lane." George looked despairingly at Mary. Her eyes were begging him to go. Art had lifted his feet up on the sofa and was sprawling out on it, muttering unkind things about brush salesmen. George went to the door, followed by Art's son, who kept snapping the pistol at him, saying, "You're dead, dead, dead." Perhaps the boy was right, George thought when he reached the porch. Maybe he was dead, or maybe this was all a bad dream from which he might eventually awake. He wanted to find the little man on the bridge again and try to persuade him to cancel the whole deal. You're welcome. I hope you have had a lovely Christmas, Westhaven. He hurried down the hill and broke into a run when he neared the river. George was relieved to see the little stranger standing on the bridge. I've had enough, he gasped. Get me out of this. You got me into it. The stranger raised his eyebrows. I got you into it. I like that. You were granted your wish. You got everything you asked for. You're the freest man on earth now. You have no ties. You can go anywhere, do anything. What more can you possibly want? Change me back, George pleaded. Change me back, please. Not just for my sake, but for others too. You don't know what a mess this town is in. You don't understand. I've got to get back. They need me here. I understand right enough, the stranger said slowly. I just wanted to make sure you did. You had the greatest gift of all conferred upon you, the gift of life, of being a part of this world and taking a part in it, yet you denied that gift. As the stranger spoke, the church bell high up on the hill sounded, calling the townspeople to Christmas vespers. Then the downtown church bell started ringing. I've got to get back, George said desperately. You can't cut me off like this. Right, it's murder. Suicide, rather, wouldn't you say? The stranger murmured. You brought it on yourself. However, since it's Christmas Eve, well, anyway, close your eyes and keep listening to the bells. His voice sank lower. Keep listening to the bells. Oh, hi Timothy Coyne. Merry Christmas. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you've had a nice Christmas. George did as he was told. He felt a cold, wet snowdrop touch his cheek, and then another and another. When he opened his eyes, the snow was falling fast, so fast that it obscured everything around him. The little stranger could not be seen, but then neither could anything else. The snow was so thick that George had to grope for the bridge railing. As he started toward the village, he thought he heard someone saying, "Merry Christmas," but the bells were drowning out all rival sounds, so he could not be sure. When he reached Hank Biddle's house, he stopped and walked out into the roadway, peering down anxiously at the base of the big maple tree. The scar was there, thank heaven. He touched the tree affectionately. He'd have to do something about the wound, get a tree surgeon or something. Anyway, he evidently been changed back. He was himself again. Maybe it was all a dream, or perhaps he had been hypnotized by the smooth flowing black water. He had heard of such things. At the corner of Main and Bridge Streets, he almost collided with the hurrying figure. It was Jim Silver, the real estate agent. "Hello, George," Jim said cheerfully. "Late tonight, ain't you? I think you'd want to be home early on Christmas Eve." George drew a long breath. "I just wanted to see if the bank is alright. I've got to make sure the vault light is on." "Hi, fun guy. Thank you for coming as well. Merry Christmas. Hope you had a nice Christmas, fun guy." "Let's look, huh?" "Oh, wait a minute. Sure it's on. I saw it as I went past." "Let's look, huh?" George said, pulling at Silver's sleeve. He wanted the assurance of a witness. He dragged the surprised real estate dealer around to the front of the bank, where the light was gleaming through the falling snow. "I told you it was on," Silver said with some irritation. "I had to make sure," George mumbled. "Thanks, and Merry Christmas." Then he was off like a streak, running up the hill. He was in a hurry to get home, but not in such a hurry that he couldn't stop for a moment at his parents' house, where he wrestled with Brownie until the friendly old bulldog waggled all over with delight. He grasped his startled brother's hand and wrung it frantically, wishing him an almost hysterical Merry Christmas. Then he dashed across the parlour to examine a certain photograph. He kissed his mother, joked with his father, and was out of the house a few seconds later, stumbling and slipping on the newly fallen snow as he ran up the hill. He was in a hurry. No, I went to that bit. The church was bright with light, and the choir and the organ were going full tilt. George flung the door to his home open and called out at the top of his voice, "Mary, where are you? Mary, kids!" His wife came toward him, dressed for going to church, and making gestures to silence him. "I've just put the children to bed," she protested. Now but not another word could she get out of her mouth, for he smothered it with kisses, and then dragged her up to the children's rooms, where he violated every tenet of parental behaviour by madly embracing his son and his daughter and waking them up thoroughly. It was not until Mary got him downstairs that he began to be coherent. "I thought I'd lost you. Oh, Mary, I thought I'd lost you. What's the matter, darling?" she asked in bewilderment. "Nah, if I was going to give you a haircut next week, Dr. Fell, maybe it would have to be a virtual one." He pulled her down on the sofa and kissed her again, and then, just as he was about to tell her about his queer dream, his fingers came in contact with something lying on the seat of the sofa. His voice froze. He did not even have to pick the thing up, for he knew what it was, and he knew that it would have been a blue handle and vari-coloured bristles. The end. Oh, hi Ichiro. Thank you for joining. I might do one more short Christmas story. Let's just see how this. Okay. Virtual though is open to many things like fungi, naughty, and Dr. Fell. Stop saying that word dog. You've already got a dog yourself. That dog Nuke. That Punjabi dog. Anyway. I'll read a letter from Santa Claus. Fungi being cheeky, Sonic. Yeah, as cheeky as you, Dr. Fell. Okay. Palace of St. Nicholas in the Moon, Christmas morning. My dear Susie Clemens, I have received and read all the letters which you and your sister have written me. Oh, I realised that I should do it. Oh no, Aaron, no, it's fine. No, they're not doing any harm, Aaron. Don't worry. I have to do it with a proper Santa Claus voice. Palace of St. Nicholas in the Moon, Christmas morning. My dear Susie Clemens, I have received and read all the letters which you and your little sister have written me. I can read your and your baby. Sister's jagged and fantastic marks without any trouble at all. But I had trouble with those letters which you dictated through your mother and the nurses. For I am a foreigner and cannot read English writing well. You will find that I made no mistakes about the things which you and the baby ordered in your own letters. I went down your chimney at midnight when you were asleep and delivered them all myself, and kissed both of you too. But there were one or two small orders which I could not fill because we ran out of stock. There was a word or two in your mamma's letter which I took to be a trunk full of doll's clothes. Is that it? I will call at your kitchen door about 9 o'clock this morning to inquire. But I must not see anybody, and I must not speak to anybody but you. When the kitchen doorbell rings, George must be blindfolded and sent to the door. You must tell George he must walk on tiptoe and not speak, otherwise he will die some day. Then you must go up to the nursery and stand on a chair or the nurse's bed and put your ear to the speaking tube that leads down to the kitchen, and when I whistle through it you must speak in the tube and say, "Welcome, Santa Claus." Then I will ask whether it was a trunk you ordered or not. If you say it was, I shall ask you what colour you want the trunk to be, and then you must tell me every single thing in detail which you want the trunk to contain. Then when I say goodbye and a Merry Christmas to my little Susie Clemens, you must say goodbye, good old Santa Claus. I thank you very much. Then you must go down into the library and make George close all the doors that open into the main hall, and everybody must keep still for a little while. I will go to the moon and get those things, and in a few minutes I will come down the chimney that belongs to the fireplace that is in the hall. If it is a trunk you want, because I couldn't get such a thing as a trunk down the nursery chimney, you know. If I should leave any snow in the hall, you must tell George to sweep it into the fireplace, for I haven't time to do such things. George must not use a broom, but a rag, else he will die some day. If my boot should leave a stain on the marble, George must not holy stone it away. Leave it there always in memory of my visit, and whenever you look at it or show it to anybody, you must let it remind you to be a good little girl. Whenever you are naughty and someone points to that mark which your good old Santa Claus's boot made on the marble, what will you say, little sweetheart? Goodbye for a few minutes, till I come down to the world and ring the kitchen doorbell. Your loving Santa Claus, whom people sometimes call the Man in the Moon. The end. Oh, hi Amelia. Happy holidays. Thank you. Happy holidays to you. I hope you had a lovely Christmas. Happy holidays, Amelia. And I'm happy you love the voice acting, Rabbit Mouse. Thank you. Hi, Noah One. Hi, Betty Olsen. Merry Christmas. Oh, Dr. Fowl. Yeah, I'm happy you are having a great afternoon with your children and grandchildren. Thank you, Hinsdale. Alright, if anyone wants to give a like, I will say the word dog just for Dr. Fowl. Thank you, Noah One. I hope you've had a lovely Christmas. Noah One is a veteran of the Lund Wars. I am going to end the stream now, so with the last request for Dr. Fowl, if any one of you give an extra like on my stream, I will say the word dog to Dr. Fowl. I'm sorry, Pecan Head, but don't worry, I will do more streams in the near future. Dr. Farrell, you don't need to spam. Oh, you wish, Pecan Head. I'm not gonna read that. Ask someone else. Thank you. I hope you have a lovely Christmas too, that Dinky Toy. Thank you, Hinsdale. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you. You're welcome. Oh, just gave 3 extra likes. Sorry, for some reason it didn't show up on my YouTube app on my phone. Dog. I'm just gonna have a quick look. But what I'm going to do is... Thank you. You're very welcome. Oh my goodness, 17 likes. 18. Sonic let the dogs out. Woof, woof, woof. Who let the dogs out? Dr. Fell. Dog. An extra dog. Thank you. Okay, thank you ever so much. Sorry about all that. I had no clue that you were giving me the likes, and it just didn't. The likes didn't increase on my app. Okay. Thank you all for listening. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. You're welcome, Dr. Fell. Thank you all for listening, and I will speak to you all again very soon. Bye bye.